right, everybody. Welcome to today's edition of AstroTalk and Tea. My name is Kelsey Bednar, and thanks for joining me. This month, we are looking at the sign of Gemini. So Gemini season started on May 20th, and the season will run for the next 30 days and end on June 20th. So in these talks, we always begin by looking at some general characteristics of the sign that we're talking about, in this case, Gemini. So if you know any Geminis in your life, or those with strong Gemini energy, you probably notice that they are very witty and very charming. They have almost a youthful quality or energy about them, no matter what their age is. They can be very social, although I should note, not every single Gemini is an extrovert, but I think a lot of them are a little more extroverted than introverted. They love to connect with other people, and they love communication. They love the sharing and exchange of ideas and information in all different spaces and on all different topics. They are very flexible. Gemini energy is very quick to adapt and to change, to shift and adjust to new situations as they arise. Geminis are very excited and stimulated by new things coming their way. And, they typically have a lot of interests and hobbies. They're kind of one of those people that has their hand in a lot of different things and projects that were kind of started and unfinished a lot of times. I think of them as great multitaskers. They like to be doing a lot of different things, love to be very mentally stimulated. In addition, kind of the overall theme, and astrologist Amy Herring talks about this in her book, Essential Astrology. It's a great book if you haven't read it. She talks about this idea, the core theme of Gemini being this idea of needing to know, to kind of be on this quest for information and for knowledge. And they have this huge drive and of curiosity, really. They're very open-minded. They can be really into data and statistics, and they're definitely the people that did the research, that read the reviews. They tend to be more like logical, left brain, rational type thinkers through things. I always think of Gemini energy as like their mind being a constant whir of information. And what I think is so great about this sign is because it is so flexible and adaptable, Geminis can be very apt to shift their perspective on things as soon as new information is introduced, and they're able to assimilate it into their current schema of things. So I think sometimes Gemini gets a bad rap for being two-faced, or being like they don't necessarily stick to things that they've said in the past, but a lot of times that's because now they have a new piece of information, a new set of data to consider, and they're able to assimilate that and shift themselves really quickly in response. And also, I like to finish with this idea of Geminis being the taste testers of life. So a lot of times they're, as I mentioned, very interested in new things, and they like to look at this idea and that idea and this project. Oh, and here's something new that's interesting. So a lot of times Geminis have tried a lot of different things. They've had a lot of different phases or versions of themselves as they've kind of gone through and taste tested different ways of being and living out in the world. A couple things to be careful of with Gemini energy. One, I kind of touched on earlier, was this idea of lack of follow through. So because they get so mentally excited and stimulated and off on a new track quite often, sometimes it can be very hard for them to actually finish something through to completion. So oftentimes if you have strong Gemini energy in your chart, you kind of have to work a little bit harder at developing that focus, that diligence, that discipline to actually master or complete something. On the idea of communication, it's important for Geminis to remember to listen as much as they talk. So like I said before, not every Gemini is an extrovert, right? It depends on other energies that are present in someone's astrology chart. However, Geminis love to share and communicate information, and a lot of times we do that through speaking. And so just remembering that it's just as valuable of a skill to be a good listener as it is a good speaker. And thirdly, with Geminis, I always say to watch out for disconnection from their body and from their emotions. Geminis live so much in their minds, and they're constantly thinking and analyzing and moving through steps mentally, like faster than most of us are. And for that reason, sometimes these other parts of self kind of get subjugated to the mind. So when that happens, when you're disconnected from your body, when you're disconnected from your emotions, that's when like anxiety and nervousness can arise. Insomnia can happen sometimes when you're disconnected. So it's just important to remember that, we're more than just a mind. We're also our emotions, our body, our soul, our universal or higher self ultimately. So that being said, those are kind of some general characteristics of Gemini qualities. But now looking at moving into the next 30 days, what is it that we all can be focusing on no matter how much or how little Gemini energy we have in our personal charts? So the first thing I have for you is take stock of your current information and knowledge. So is there something you could learn or brush up on to improve your skills and to bring you a new set of information that helps you achieve your goals? So for instance, could you take a course on, something maybe even as simple as like a Google spreadsheets or Microsoft Excel, something along those lines that could help you get further ahead on a project at work? Is there a course you can take that helps get you ready for a promotion in the future? Is there information you could learn that would help you with a creative project or personal development? A quick example of that could be, if you're someone who, due to COVID, has kind of found themselves in a new job space and you're trying to launch like your own business through an online platform, what do you need to learn about using contact and email lists? What can you learn about using social media to your benefit? If you're someone who's doing a creative project, can you learn more about photo editing? There's so many different things associated with what we could spend our time learning right now. So really thinking about what kind of knowledge and information do we want to acquire during this next month. Secondarily, the idea of communication, I want to talk about sharing your message, okay? Because even though we always have more to learn, Gemini energy is very much about, I do have knowledge and information, I do have wisdom to share with people. So how am I going to do that? Am I going to write a short story or poetry? Am I going to, start a blog? Am I going to post more on social media? Am I going to just call up, different friends and loved ones and engage in more conversation? There's lots of different ways to get your message out there. So start to think about, if you're not already doing that, in what ways could you invite more of that into your life? Thirdly, becoming more flexible. Very easy for some of us, very difficult for others of us. But just, watch over the next month at what unfolds, what's presented to you in your life. And if there are changes or new situations that arise, just kind of observe, like, how well do you adapt or not to the new things that are presented? And where in your life can you bring a little bit more of that energy of flow, not being quite so structured and strict about everything, but letting yourself be able to be a little bit more changeable, a little bit more flexible with whatever comes your way. And lastly, what we can all be doing during this time is connecting with others, because Gemini does love that kind of coming together in a social sense. So, I felt like during Taurus season, we kind of saw a reduction in the amount of Zooms that were happening. I mean, many people are still using Zoom for work purposes, but from a social standpoint, at least my Zoom usage went way down. So this could be a great time to kind of bring that back, to connect with people both near and far. And also, as certain states begin to open up at different paces, perhaps it becomes, you have an ability to do like a social distance walk or small gathering with one or two friends, or kind of starting to connect back with people that you may have felt a little disconnected from during the shelter in place. Next part of this Gemini season, I want to talk about what we can do from an herbal, yogic, breathwork, standpoint to really connect with this Gemini energy and use it to the best of our abilities. So starting with herbs, a lot of the herbs that I recommend for Gemini season are ones that connect to relaxation and calming. Because we talked about You know, with Gemini being so excitable and so mental and so rapidly thinking all the time, sometimes we can be like spin away on a mental runaway train, and it can be hard to calm down, to ground down, to get back into our bodies and to kind of find a level of like peacefulness in the mind. So some great herbs for calm and relaxation are skullcap, valerian, milky oats is great, passion flower is good, and all those herbs can also help with insomnia as well, like calming and use in the evening potentially too. And then also fennel is a great herb to use during Gemini season to support your overall like detoxification and allergy stuff. Aromatherapy, I definitely recommend lavender and relaxing blends, kind of playing on this theme of helping to calm our nervous system. You know, Gemini rules the nervous system as well as a few other parts of the body. So it's important to take care and watch out for our nervous system and how stimulated we're getting during this time. When we talk about yoga, different aspects to focus on right now, I would recommend, if you're practicing asana, the physical branch of yoga, to work on poses that help you to get back into your body, centered within yourself. So I would recommend both meditation and physical poses that are going to help you kind of visualize this idea of drawing the energy from your crown down through the chakras towards your root. And it's funny, a friend of mine in Denver, her name's Elizabeth Marie, she's a great psychic / tarot card reader. She always talks about that she doesn't ground from the root upwards, she grounds from the crown down. And it's an idea I've been playing around with since I heard her say that. And I think for Gemini season especially, that idea is perfect. I would also recommend in the physical practice of yoga, you know, with Gemini energy, we can have a little bit of this like nervousness, this flitting all over the place, kind of inability to sit still and focus, as we touched on earlier. So I think in a physical yoga practice, yes, I would recommend, like, in the first half of your practice, you can make it a little bit more physical. You can build a little bit more heat, you know, start to release some of that energy from the physical body so it's not just all inside of you. But I really encourage you to spend the last half of your practice in really grounding poses. So that can be poses such as, you know, goddess squat. That can be something as, you know, literal as you're on the ground in seated forward fold, or in bound angle pose, Baddha Konasana. You're laying on your back and doing happy baby pose. You know, whatever speaks to you, just really work on the latter half of the practice being something that is very slow and grounding. And also, you know, Gemini deals with the shoulders and the arms and the wrists, and as well as the lungs and the nervous system. So working on poses that help to kind of strengthen the arms and the wrists. So maybe doing some prep work up through chaturangas and working through those, and also opening up the shoulders. So that can be something as simple as when you're doing any type of standing forward fold, maybe you clasp your hands together at your low back and kind of bring your arms up as you fold forward. That can also look like, you know, dancer's pose, whether you're doing it on your stomach or doing it standing, you know, anything that really helps to open the shoulders and the muscles here, as well as strengthen through the arms and the wrists. Looking at breath work for this season, I'm going to recommend 2 different breath practices. One is called alternate nostril breathing, or Nadi Shodhana is the Sanskrit name. And if you're not familiar with alternate nostril breathing, I'm not going to walk you through the steps here. You can definitely Google that. But basically, it's the idea of breathing through one nostril and then the other, and kind of alternating, so that we can bring the hemispheres of our brain back into balance. Because with this Gemini energy, sometimes we get heavy into the left brain, into the logical, the rational, the thinking mind. And so to make sure we keep that energy in balance with that right brain and that more intuitive knowing, that can be a great breath practice to work with. The second one I would recommend is Bumblebee breath, or Bhramari breath. And this one is great anytime you're feeling very stressed or overwhelmed or overstimulated, which can sometimes happen with strong Gemini energy, because, this is one where you're kind of closing your ears, you're gently closing your nostrils, you're gently closing the eyes. You're kind of cutting off all external stimulation and focusing on your own breath and the sound that it's making. So that can be a really great one to have a calming effect as well. So lots of good herbs and yoga and breath that we can work with during this time. The last thing in this section I almost forgot about stones. This is a newer thing that I'm talking about in these Astro Talks, but a couple stones that really jumped out that could be helpful during Gemini season if you meditate with them or carry them around with you. The first one is clear quartz, because it has the ability to help us kind of, close out external distraction and really focus on what it is that we're doing. And it also helps us to better absorb and assimilate information, which Gemini loves. The second one is blue lace agate. This is helpful for choosing the right words when we're communicating and choosing them kind of thoughtfully or purposefully. I think Gemini can be so chatty and they just love to connect in a communicative sense that sometimes, and the rate at which they talk is also can be fast too. So sometimes I think Gemini energy is not always as thoughtful about what words it's using when. And so this stone can kind of help you to make sure that your communication is very clear and very purposeful based on whatever it is you want to say. And the last stone is, I'm probably going to pronounce this incorrectly, so someone can message me and tell me about that if I do, is lepidolite. Lepidolite? I'm not sure how to say that. But this one is recommended also for calming an overactive mind, which is another thing that is useful during this time. All right, highlights during this Gemini season from May 20th to June 20th of 2020, a lot of 20s there. Firstly, this was yesterday, Friday, May 22nd, was the new moon in Gemini, and I just couldn't really get my act together fast enough to get this video out before the new moon. But we're still within definitely the strong energy of that new moon and will be kind of through tomorrow, Sunday the 24th. So if you haven't done a ritual or a little at-home ceremony to honor the new moon, to set your intentions, you still have time to do that, and I would encourage you to do that. This new moon was at 2 degrees of Gemini, so if you are familiar with where that falls in your personal chart, that can help you set intentions. But additionally, this new moon was a good time to reflect on how we think and communicate about what it is that we love and value, because we had kind of a Mercury and Venus mashup happening also in Gemini. And additionally, what was interesting is we had a tough aspect to the planet Mars, which can create a little bit of a frustrated energy. So I don't know if anyone was feeling that yesterday, but it's kind of like this idea that you can't really get what you want. You feel like you're not getting what you want, but also you don't actually know what you want. So it's just sort of this like, ugh, type of energy. So that was kind of going on with the new moon too. And I think that in combination with a Saturn aspect made the moon not feel as like light and fun and free as a normal Gemini new moon would have felt like. But it was a good time to be disciplined about setting those intentions, because that connection to Saturn kind of helps you to ground down and make a practice out of it. Additionally, during all of Gemini season, we are going to see the planet Venus being retrograde, or having retrograde motion. So if you've talked with me about retrogrades before, then you know that it doesn't mean that a planet is actually moving backwards in its orbit around the sun. It just means that from Earth's perspective, it appears that Venus is going to be moving backwards in the sky from, May 13th all the way until June 25th. So the entire 30 days of Gemini season has Venus retrograde in the sign of Gemini, which is really interesting. So when a planet is retrograde, the themes that it connects to are really highlighted. So the planet Venus is all about love and relationships. It's about beauty. It's about aesthetic. It's about the things that we like. It's about what makes us, happy and pleased when we look at it. All those types of themes might be coming up in different ways for people at this time. So, in a sense of what we value, this is a really great time to review what it is we value. And because it's in Gemini, sometimes having conversations with other people can help reflect back to us some of our own values. Like if we're not able to get clear on that just in and of ourselves, I think it's great to call up a trusted friend, family member, coworker, and just talk about some different things that are on your mind, and that can really help you get clarity around what it is you value and why. I think also, it's a great time to look at relationships because it's Venus. A lot of times it's like love relationships, but also our relationship with ourselves. When a planet is retrograde, sometimes shadows can come up. And what I mean by shadows are aspects of that energy or aspects of self that we don't love, don't like to look at, and typically kind of try to stuff down so we don't have to deal with it on a daily basis. So if you have any shadows around loving yourself, being in loving partnership with others, those things might come up so that you can look at those and work with them a little bit more during this time. With Venus retrograde too, we always talk about how the return of the ex partner, whoever that might be for you. So this doesn't necessarily happen for everyone, but I personally have definitely had an experience like this where sometimes during Venus retrograde, like ex partners just kind of come back out of the woodwork, or all of a sudden, that person you haven't thought about in a year and a half, you suddenly have this really intense, deep longing to reach out to them and connect with them, and they're just on your mind. It's just kind of a funny thing that happens during Venus retrograde. So here's going to be my recommendation for this. If you feel like an intense need to reach out to an ex-partner, I would say do so with caution, do so with realistic expectations in mind. If you hear from an ex-partner, if someone reaches out to you, I think the same thing. It is possible that you might come back together to give things another try, or you might come back together because there's a little something that was unfinished that now we're going to get the opportunity to finish it. But on the whole, I would say that, typically if you feel like, oh yes, we're going to get back together and it's going to be so great, a lot of times once the retrograde is over, that energy kind of dissipates. So just proceed with caution. Don't move too quickly on anything. Just let this next period of time until June 25th be like a trial run of anything that you're considering bringing back into your life, or anyone that you're considering bringing back into your life. Lastly, on this topic of Venus retrograde, it is not necessarily a great time to start new things connected to Venus. So number one, brand new love relationships. It doesn't mean that you can't start a relationship under Venus retrograde. It just means that when the retrograde is over, you might decide that what you thought you wanted isn't actually what you really want. So that's kind of why the caution on new relationships. But also anything connected to beauty and aesthetics. So like redecorating something in your home, getting a new hair color, a new haircut, doing something new with your wardrobe. Like, just recognize that when this time is over, you might not feel quite as excited about these new changes as you did right now when they were happening. So proceed with caution once again during that time. And the last thing I want to share with you guys is we're going to have a full moon during this season, as we do during every season. And the full moon is going to be in Sagittarius on June 5th. And I believe it's going to be 15 degrees of Sagittarius. So a Sag full moon is like, ooh, big party. Sag loves to go out and explore and have fun and, laugh and make jokes. But what's interesting is there's going to be another square to Mars, a tough angle to the planet Mars. So the new moon had a tough angle to Mars, and the full moon is going to have the same, which is really interesting, I think. And so what this means is, again, this theme of like this frustrated energy might come up around June 5th, and that's, I think, a Friday. So it's like with this Sag full moon, like we're ready to party. We want to be free. We want to get out and explore. It's like this energy of let me out, like here I come, world type of thing. But with that square to Mars, I think the way in which we want to come out and be free isn't going to quite be possible yet, just with what's happening around the world. So we might get really frustrated about that. So I want to encourage everyone on that full moon, spend time in nature. Sagittarius loves to be out exploring nature, and that is going to help to burn off some of that excess energy and frustration that you're feeling. Let yourself be surrounded in your backyard or a park or near a beach or mountains or whatever's near where you live that you have access to, a nice garden somewhere in your community, and just kind of let that nature soothe your soul a little bit. And at that full moon too, it's really interesting. We're going to have, what we need to embody is actually Virgo energy at that time. So it's this energy of using really good judgment and discernment around what's good for us and what is not. So we're going to have this like Sag full moon that we want to just break out and party and do whatever we want. But with Virgo energy, it says, whoa, slow down, think through this, use your best judgment. Okay. Additionally, the energy of Virgo is throwing yourself into your work. And whatever it is that may be, it's a work in your home, it's something with your kids, it's something, work of personal development, it's like work. Virgo is all about diving into the details and really organizing and getting things set up and working hard and feeling really satisfied by the work that's accomplished. So we can bring that energy into our full moon on June 5th as well. So anyway, this is a longer video than I intended it to be. This is the longest one yet. But this is Gemini season, May 20th to June 20th of 2020. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me via email, kelsey@theastroyogi.com. Reach out to me on Instagram, _astro_yogi. Or we can connect via YouTube. And if you're interested in having a chart reading or asking anything about your personal chart, always here for appointments as well. So thanks for joining me tonight. Cheers.